Why you need to distort the life and personality of an author? What are you afraid of? Hi everyone and welcome back to John Florio channel. I am Mary and I'm here to talk about Shakespeare. I have shown you in my past video that Shakespeare was highly influenced by Giordano Bruno. He read his works, he knew his revolutionary thought, and unlike his contemporaries, writers like Ben Jonson or Christopher Marlowe, he decided to embrace his ideas and to share his thesis upon the infinite universe, the transmigration of the soul, memory palace, ideas that we find Shakespeare's plays like Hamlet. I have also shown you that John Florio spent 3 happy years with Giordano Bruno at the French embassy in London between 1583 and 1585. Thanks to Giordano Bruno, John Florio changed his ideas upon the universe, his religion. Bruno changed Florio's personality completely. Now I want to share with you a subject that I had the pleasure to present during a conference about 5 months ago at the University of Luxembourg. The paper is titled John Florio, the Ayde of Shakespeare's Muse, in which I propose a new thesis upon the connection between Shakespeare and John Florio and the play Love's Labour's Lost. This play contains many Giordano Bruno's fingerprints, and it has been often described as a problematic play for its unknown sources and hot topics discussed. In the next series of videos, you will see first, a new perspective on the connection between John Florio and Shakespeare. Second, a new analysis on the play Love's Labour's Lost. Third, all the traces and fingerprints of Giordano Bruno in the play. John Florio's fingerprints in the play. How Shakespeare really wrote it. You will have a completely new perspective on this play. Are you ready? Before we start, if you are new, don't forget to subscribe, and if you haven't watched my videos on Shakespeare, John Florio and Giordano Bruno, do it right now because you will have a better idea of what I'm going to share with you in the next series of videos. And now, let's start. Okay, the connection between John Florio and Shakespeare has been the object of several countless studies. John Florio was not just one of the most important humanists of his time, highly prized by important aristocratic circles and the best writers of his age. He was also a friend of people like Philip Sidney, Ben Jonson, Giordano Bruno, Edmund Spenser, Queen Anne of Denmark, the most important Elizabethan writers and the most important aristocrats of Shakespeare's age. After Florio's death in 1625, writers continued to pay homage to Florio, describing him as a great poet and a great writer, until something happened, until the first biography of Shakespeare was published. From that moment, Shakespeare scholars have portrayed John Florio as stupid, arrogant, the exact reverse of his real personality. So Shakespeare scholars began to stress the speculation that some characters in Shakespeare's plays were parodic portraits of John Florio. At the same time, they also tried to downplay Florio's influence as a writer and as a linguist and translator. So it was a double act of mudslinging. In this way, they overturn the truth. Let's make some examples. Old legend of Holofernes. If you have read just one book about Shakespeare, you must have encountered these speculations. John Florio was the pedant Holofernes in Love's Labour's Lost. How this fake legend started. How and who started it? It was first suggested by William Warburton and Alexander Pope in the works of Shakespeare published in 1747. On page 2027, they wrote, by Holofernes is designed a particular character, a teacher of the Italian tongue in London, who has given us a small dictionary of that language under the title of A World of Words. You can see here the double mudslinging. First, Florio is the pedant. Second, he described here not as a translator, a great linguist. No, he is a teacher of the Italian tongue in London that has given us a small dictionary, just very small, a tiny dictionary. Florio's first dictionary contained 75,000 English words. Queen Anna's New World of Words, the second edition of his dictionary, contained 150,000 English words. And you probably know it now very well that Florio contributed to English language, creating about 1,000 new English words, just like Shakespeare. They went on by asserting that Shakespeare mocked Florio in other ways, not just as Holofernes. There are other characters frequently suggested as caricatural portraits of Florio. Florio has also been compared to Shylock. They imply that Shakespeare writes Shylock basing the language, origin, and religion of the character on John Florio. Why? John Florio had Jewish ancestors and he knew Hebrew very well. Another character suggested as a portrait of John Florio is John Falstaff, that was suggested by Arthur Aitchison in Shakespeare's Lost Years in London, 1586-1592, giving new light on the pre-sonnet period, showing the inception of relations between Shakespeare and the Earl of Southampton, and displayed John Florio as Sir John Falstaff. This book was published in 1920 and got great success, and is still today very much cited book basically everywhere. And again, Florio here is portrayed as John Falstaff. Let's read what Aitchison writes. In altering the play in 1598 and changing the name of Sir John Orchestal to Sir John Falstaff, I am convinced that Shakespeare intentionally made his caricature of John Florio more transparent by choosing a name having the same initials as his, and furthermore, that in altering the historical name of Falstaff to Falstaff, he intended to indicate Florio relations with Southampton as Falstaff, a misleader or youth. So Florio is portrayed as evil man, negative influence on the Earl of Southampton. I have made a series of videos upon John Florio and the Earl of Southampton, in which you can clearly understand by the documents of the time that Florio didn't just have a great relationship with the young Earl, but they were very close friends. Florio was his teacher, his close friend. He was involved in the Earl's private affairs, at least from 1591 to 1598. So as you can see, there is a pattern. Shakespeare scholars try to downplay John Florio, diminishing his career, his influence on English language and literature, his real contribution to English culture, and basically portrayed him as negative, in a negative way, either as stupid, arrogant, or as someone who was a spy, who had a very bad personality. There is also another example that I want to show you, that it's the evidence of the great amount of the Shakespeare scholars have thrown to Florio. And it is a description of Florio that has been published basically in every Shakespeare book, and also in biographies of other contemporaries of Shakespeare, like Philip Sidney, Edmund Spenser. Let's read how they describe him. This Reverend J.H. Halpin, no one knows who he was was not far from the truth in saying that Florio was beset with tempers and oddities, which exposed him more perhaps the element of his time to the ridicule of his contemporaries. So again, you see how they portray him. And that he was in his literary career jealous, vain, irritable, pedantic, bombastical, petulant, quarrelsome, ever on the watch for an affront, always in the attitude of a fretful porcupine. I would also like to point out that this description has also been copied and passed in recent biographies about Shakespeare. The complete collection of his works, published by the Delphi Classic in 2013, contain these words. There are like 3-4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 lines of insults to Florio. In this way, the reader must not be curious about him. The reader must dislike John Florio. But this is not over, because the trash continue with other glorious, famous academics that have made up other stories about John Florio from the same purpose, for the same aim: portray him in the worst possible way. Jonathan Bate, probably one of the most important Shakespeare scholars, published The Genius of Shakespeare, an important famous book about the bard, in which he basically portrayed John Florio's wife as the dark lady of the sonnets. So again, he portrayed Florio as cuckold, his wife having a secret affair with Shakespeare. You should wonder, does he know who was John Florio's wife? No, he doesn't. He makes up names of John Florio's wife: Alice, Aline, Florio. He tried to imagine this woman, because truth is that they don't have any proof of what they are saying, because they don't have documents about John Florio's wife, but they want to portray her as the dark lady, again for the same aim or purpose that I have described to you before. Florio was always in Shakespeare's mind. Shakespeare loved to mock Florio. Shakespeare slept with John Florio's wife. They prefer to write something negative about Florio, even if it's a complete lie, instead of not writing it at all, instead of proposing alternative theories about it. To sum it up, can you believe the amount of lies, false speculation, these famous, the most important Shakespeare scholars and academics have written about John Florio? More unbelievable is the second story that they have carried on, because Florio was not just a stupid, pedant, cuckold, presumptuous teacher of the Italian tongue, but he was also a friend of Shakespeare. He was a teacher, someone who, for unknown reasons, gave Shakespeare the sources for his plays, the Italian books. So while Shakespeare insulted Florio, they were also friends, and this makes perfectly sense. Why I'm saying this, why they use Florio as a friend of Shakespeare, someone who gave him the Italian books. He had a library of 400 books, and many of these books were the sources that Shakespeare used in his plays. Books by Aretino, Grotto, Boccaccio, Bandello, Commedia dell'arte, and so on. He was also portrayed as someone who he was a teacher of Shakespeare, of the Italian tongue, of the Italian language. So Florio was at the same time Shakespeare's greatest enemy and his greatest friend, his closest friend. And to summarize this connection, he used the word intermediary, what it means. Florio defined this word as intermediate, and intermediate also to interlace or work between, which suggests that his role in Shakespeare's works is between the playwright and his sources, so the primal draft and the final work. Florio stood somewhere in between Shakespeare's sources and the final work of his play. How Shakespeare scholars have explained this connection? The connection has been generally grounded by the evidence that they both joined the patronage of Henry Rose, the third Earl of Southampton. We know that Florio entered the patronage of Henry in 1591. We know that Shakespeare dedicated the Rape of Lucrece and Venus and Adonis to the young Earl, but we don't know if they ever met, if Shakespeare really got into Henry's patronage. Dedicating a work to a patron didn't always mean to immediately get into his patronage. So this connection is, in my opinion, a bit feeble. The greatest indisputable relation between John Florio and Shakespeare is not in their connection with the Earl of Southampton, but the connection between Shakespeare and Florio is textual. Why? Because Florio's first and second works, published in 1578 and 1591, contains dialogues, proverbs, witty sayings later used by Shakespeare. Florio's two small Italian English dictionaries, A Word of Words and Queen Anna's New Word of Words, in which he contributed to the English language with more than 1,000 new words, represent another important source for Shakespeare's use of language. Some words that Shakespeare created were originally written by Florio, same with compounds, and so on. Sometimes there is a little difference between a word created by Florio and a word created by Shakespeare. Ultimately, Florio translated Montaigne's essays in 63, so scholars have identified in Shakespeare's works about 100 passages showing similarities with Florio's works. So the connection between these two writers is not in their patronage with the Earl of Southampton, but their connection is textual. They both have this passion for words. They had similar styles, similar taste in the language. They both love proverbs, they both love compounds, created words in the same way. Nowadays, in the recent years, there has been a new attitude towards Florio. What I mean that scholars have reevaluated his works. And the identification of Holofernes and other characters was made by an early generation of scholars has been generally disregarded. So Shakespeare scholars have admitted that there has been an oversimplification of Florio's personality, of Florio's works, but there is still no doubt that some Shakespeare's plays contain Florio's fingerprints, his writing style. So, to summarize, Shakespeare and Florio have a similar writing style. Scholars in the past have tried to explain this similarity by stating, well, there is Florio's fingerprints in Shakespeare's works because Shakespeare loved to mock him, because the characters in Shakespeare's plays are caricatural portraits of him. So, Holofernes, Don Armado, John Falstaff, John Florio's wife as the Dark Lady. This thesis resulted to be not just a plain insult to Florio, but also a way to minimize his great influence as writer. So they were trying to put Florio in the shadows. Problem is, why? Why you need to distort the life and personality of an author? What are you afraid of? When the thesis of Holofernes and the caricatural portraits be definitely removed, still remains another thesis, which is Florio is the mediator. Florio is the friend, the schoolmaster, someone who, in a way or another, helped Shakespeare write in those plays. He gave him the sources, he gave him the books, he helped him with Italian language. He gave Shakespeare access to the magic word of multiculturality, of Italy, of Italian authors, of French, of Montaigne, of Giordano Bruno. But in this way, Florio has always been described as someone distant from Shakespeare's world, someone who, gave him the sources, gave him access to the language, helped him with the style, but was not connected with the world of theatre, someone who stood in between Shakespeare and his plays. Now, in my paper, I have proposed a different perspective, and I have done it first by demonstrating what other scholars haven't. Florio's connection with theatre, which is a subject that has been rarely addressed. In the next video, I will show you how, since he arrived in London, Florio befriended theatre companies, and I will show you a totally different perspective on the Florio problem in Shakespeare world. Let me know in the comments if you have questions, suggestions, if you have comments. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe. Stay resolute. Bye.